Will you please join me in our call to worship? We are a justice-making, truth-seeking people.
We gather as a community of believers and seekers.
We share a reverence for the mystery of life.
We are building the beloved community.
Come, let us worship together.
So good morning, Birmingham Unitarian Church.
Good morning.
Great. It is so good to be together again on such a beautiful fall day that you would spend an hour with us in such a beautiful sanctuary, such a sacred space. So whether you are joining us here in the sanctuary or remotely via Zoom or watching this recording later, it is good to connect with all of you. As a multi-platform church, it is important for us to build a bridge between online and in-person participants. We're calling this connection Greeting Our Virtual Neighbors. First, we will project the image of the folks who are currently on Zoom up here on our screen and ask them to turn their cameras on and give us a wave. Now, we who are gathered in person will turn to face the camera which is the black in the corner. It's not the projector. And wave. Perfect. Whenever and however we connect with BUC, we are building BUC. At home, on campus, in the world, every day, we here at Birmingham Unitarian Church, and we are building the beloved community. We join with other Unitarian Universalists around the world as we light our chalice. During this Diwali season, our chalice is lit to guide goodness into our beloved community. As light banishes dark, so may we work to banish destructive forces from our world.
Come on, Alabama. I love it. Today we are exploring and honoring the holiday of Diwali. This is one of the major religious festivals in Hinduism, Jainism, and Sikhism. There are many traditions and stories that are associated with Diwali in order to keep things manageable and accessible for a 1-hour Unitarian Universalist worship service. We'll highlight a few of the stories and traditions that are most near and dear to us in our hearts. As our exploration of Diwali unfolds, I invite you to think about the themes that might apply to your spiritual life or where you might resonate with the story.
As Reverend Mandy just said, there are various stories behind the celebration of Diwali, what exactly Diwali commemorates, and why it is celebrated. The most popular story is from the Hindu epic, the Ramayana. For today's Time for All Ages, we will be learning more about this story in particular, only you'll be hearing it told by somebody else. We chose to show this video created by Mokami this morning because it provides an excellent summary and visualization of the events told in the Ramayana. After the video ends, Our K through 5th grade children will join their teachers in the back of the sanctuary and head off to their classroom.
Diwali is a festival of joy and prosperity and a celebration of the victory of good over evil. This is the story of Ram and Ravan. A story related to this festival. Thousands of years ago, in the city of Ayodhya, there was a wise and good king named Dashrath who ruled along with his 3 queens and 4 princes. The eldest, Ram, and his beautiful wife Sita lived happily along with the other prince brothers and their wives. But one of King Dashrath's wives was jealous of Ram and demanded that he be exiled to the forest for 14 years so that her son Bharat be made king. Having once promised his wife to fulfill any wish of hers, the helpless king exiled Ram to the forest. And so, Ram set off on foot, accompanied by his loving wife Sita and loyal younger brother Lakshman. A few years into their exile, a demoness named Surpanakha saw Ram and fell for his looks. She asked Ram to marry her. Ram refused and asked her to go to Lakshman instead. But Lakshman also refused. Enraged, Surpanakha showed her true form, and Lakshman cut off her nose and ears. The demoness went wailing to her brother, who was none other than Ravan, the demon king of Lanka. Ravan was furious and swore revenge. With the help of another demon who took the form of a golden deer, he distracted Ram and Lakshman and kidnapped Sita from their hut. When Ram and Lakshman returned, Diwali is a festival of joy and prosperity.
Briefer summary. Where we left off, there was the deer that was a distraction. Ravana had taken Sita back, and in the process of trying to get Sita to return, Rama and Lakshma found an army of monkeys and bears, and among them was Hanuman. And Hanuman agreed to help return Sita. So Hanuman jumps across the sea to Lanka, finds her, reassures her that Ram will come and rescue her. In the process, the army comes, and there's a great battle between Ravana and his army and the army of monkeys and bears. And now is up to Ram and Ravana, and they're fighting. And there was a little birdie in his ear that told Rama that in order to defeat Ravana, you need to pierce him in the navel. So with a special arrow, he was able to strike Rama in the navel, defeating him, and they were all reunited, and they returned to Ayodhya. And their return after 14 years was celebrated with rangoli, which are beautiful, decorative, like patterns on the ground, and that's what we're going to be exploring today in RE as well, made with powder, and then the little dia lamps. And so we're also going to be making some of those too. So Diwali being the festival of lights, they lit the way for Rama, Sita, and Lakshma's return. I encourage you to seek out this video because my telling is not nearly as great as theirs, I promise. So, and again, also, I encourage you to seek out the other stories around Diwali because there are so many. So at this time, let's have our K through 5th graders join us at the back of the sanctuary.
The mission of Birmingham Unitarian Church is to be a free and welcoming religious community that encourages lives of integrity, learning, service, and joy. One way we live out this mission is by giving half of our weekly offering to a nonprofit organization that shares our values and addresses needs in one of these areas: environmental action, income equality, civic engagement, and racial justice. We support a new organization each month. The Plate Share recipient for the month of October is the Michigan Urban Farming Initiative, whose mission is to empower urban communities by using agriculture as a platform to promote socioeconomic disparity, to promote education, sustainability, and community while simultaneously reducing socioeconomic disparity. Let there be an offering in support of our beloved community and organizations that build the world we dream about. This morning's offering will now be received. Ushers, please come forward. We are a church of open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. With gratitude, we dedicate this offering to the good works of our congregation and dedicate ourselves to its service.
We've come to the time in our service that we set aside for prayer and centering. We begin with a sharing of joys and sorrows from our congregation. There were no joys or sorrows submitted today. Don't forget those can be submitted online or written in the back, the book in the back. But I think we know that there are always joys and sorrows in our hearts, even when we don't take the time to share them. And collectively, we are still struggling with the knowledge of what's happening in Ukraine. I think we are worried about inflation and the economy, what's happening in the United Kingdom. I think we worry about environmental degradation, and we worry about the midterms that are coming up, and it brings a lot of stress. We live in a swing state, and we are surrounded by very high adrenaline advertising that's meant to try to catch us and goad us, and it's hard not to get caught up in that. And there's still an ongoing pandemic. So I think it's safe to say that we bring with us sorrows this morning and concerns. And with that, there are so many joys. This has been the most beautiful fall that I can remember. For every concern and every heartbreak we have, we know someone has just fallen in love. We know that somewhere a baby was born that was healthy and wanted. We know that there are kids who are learning how to play instruments, finding out who they are in the world. There's a lot of good things happening too, out there and in here. On the fourth Sunday of the month, we take a little extra time to light memorial candles to honor those who have gone before us, or to perhaps ritualize the concerns that are in our hearts. I'll invite you to please come up this aisle to light a candle as you feel moved, and then return to your seats in this direction. I'll start by lighting a candle from our chalice, and that's for those of you who are joining us on Zoom.
Diwali is colorful. The vividly vibrant saris that my mom, aunt, and my dad's wife wear, me too sometimes now that I'm old enough to know how to put it on. The richly printed Punjabi suits that my female cousins and sister-in-law wear. The ghagra cholis that the younger girls are forced into with their unnecessarily long skirts, itchy short tops, and draped sashes. The roomy, brightly colored kurta shirts the men and boys wear, which they all complain are starchy in raw silk or too much cotton fabric, or they cannot possibly properly throw a football in while wearing. The rangoli, decorated powder designs on the front porches to invite blessings into the home. The deliciously rich celebration food in various shapes, colors, and textures. Beautiful fresh flowers whose fragrance waft around the religious altar area after we pull off their petals and crush them in preparation for worship. Tiny lit diyas, or candles, scattered on windowsills and all around the house. The fireworks at the end of the day which illuminate the night sky, and sparklers which light up our faces as we smile with delight at the little ones and their wonder at fire-lit sticks of color in their hands. Diwali is structured. From a young age, my mom and aunt took turns hosting every other year. Family Diwali began back in 1970 with my newly immigrated parents, my aunt and uncle, and my 2 older cousins who were babies. Fast forward over 50 years, and there are definitely more than 25 people there every year, with my Boston family, our Canadian family, random relatives in town from India or all over the US and Canada, significant others who come and join the scene, neighbors, and many more. Structured because there is an agenda. We stay up late after a potluck dinner Friday, playing games and giggling, sleep in rows of sleeping bags in the living room and on couches, on beds all over the house. Then in the morning, we're not allowed to eat until the puja, the religious ceremony, is complete. We wake early. My aunt makes a paste of sandalwood powder and vegetable oil, which she lovingly massages into each one of us, our arms, our necks, nowadays my brother and uncle's bald heads. We all must shower, which takes a long time. My Boston uncle is the last to get up, and each child is sent in turn to poke and prod him, since everyone is starving and eager to get to the festivities. The menu has been determined for weeks, no years, and most of the food is made from scratch, though over the last decades, many more things have become readily available. The puja, this is what moves me most, as does all worship. We gather at the altar, which holds several deities, pictures of ancestors who have passed away, and tiny samples of each food that will be enjoyed by the gathering, because you must offer it first to God before we can all feast. We chant prescribed family prayers, which my dad, uncle, and aunt mostly lead. Some of us know all the words. Some need the first word to prompt them for each line, and others sit and goofily observe the rest of the gathering. Some of us harmonize inappropriately to the chants and exchange looks and giggles over the ritual of it all. An elder shares the Ram, Sita, Lakshman story that you heard today, which Shannon did a beautiful job finishing up the end of the story for you. Someone else will share prayer and intentions for the gathering. Sometimes family members will talk about people they miss, like my dear mother-in-law, Emily, or our dear uncle, Umesh Kaka, our grandparents, or sometimes people will talk about what Diwali means to them personally. Even the little ones can chime in and participate. These moments in worship feel awe-inspiring, affirming, aspirational, and amusing to me as I notice who feels part of the gathering, who does not, who shares and who does not, who connects to the ritual and who does not. It is these contradictions that move me, the laughter the awe, and the tears. After the puja, let the eating of the special foods begin. Then there's some lounging, Michigan football, a sneaky trip to the stores for last-minute gifts, football out on the lawn, then finally getting to the gift giving, where though brothers are supposed to give sisters their gifts in this Hindu Bhaubis custom, our moms modified it years ago so all the little ones, and even the big ones, get gifts. Dinner prep, dinner eat, more games, maybe several rounds of bananagrams, Pictionary, more laughter, little family snark, and everyone sleeps over again. Sunday morning, bagels, lounging, people study, pack up and catch planes, have last conversations, find lost new toy parts, and pack up leftover celebration goodies to indulge in for the week ahead. The food plopped into Ziploc bags and old yogurt containers. There is some letdown, but mostly we are tired happy. Diwali is fraught. Our family is full of high-energy, organized, managerial people. Everyone is a boss, not just like a boss, I mean an actual boss. People are doctors, have high-functioning jobs, own businesses, run large-scale programs with minions, teach, boss people around. You get it. And we all have strong personalities, and we each do things the right way. So there is much maneuvering to spare feelings and get all the jobs done. COVID was hard on our family Diwali. In 2020, we Zoomed to try and plan an outdoor event, but found it impossible with weather, aerosols, and trying to protect our older generation. In 2021, things were better, but different ideas of danger and safety collided in the development of vaccines, loosening of rules, and everyone's varying comfort with risks involved. We did separate household Diwalis, but our younger generation teens all still hung out together. It was weird, a bit sad, and there were some hard feelings, some of which might still linger. This year, Diwali 2022 was thrown together by both households because life is busy and we didn't really prioritize Diwali maybe the way we had in the past. Maybe we got out of the habit. And currently, I feel a mixture of relief, guilt, sadness, and resignation. Relief to not have to deal with the micromanaging and detailed planning that must go into Diwali to honor everyone's feelings and traditions. Guilt that I'm not providing our kids, Rakesh and Reina, with the carefree weekend that we all remember with fondness. Sadness that our lives and relationships have transitioned into very real family discord. And resignation, because I'm beginning to accept that life continues to be different than what I expect it to be in Diwali, in general. Diwali is evolving. Now, we can eat bagels before the puja on Saturday. That traditional American Hindu Diwali breakfast food. There used to be no alcohol at Diwali, period. Now, there is drinking. There used to be no meat all weekend long. Now, we consistently order pizza on Friday, sometimes even late on Saturday, much to the chagrin of some elders. And now there will be mutiny if we don't have sausage, bacon, or pepperoni somewhere in there. Traditions abound and remain through all of life's changes. Maybe our Diwali is very different from your Christmas rituals or your Rosh Hashanah traditions or any other religion-infused holiday that you can think of in the nuts and bolts of it. But I don't think it's that different. With these types of gatherings, there are unifying moments and divisive ones. There are moments of reflection where we revel in, and moments of discord where we are annoyed or hurt. Whatever the fleeting feeling, I do know that in this gathering, these are people who connect me back to where and who I came from. And now, I feel the same about our beloved BUC community. There are more things here that connect us than divide us. I might be a 40-something woman of color with immigrant parents, but in Unitarian Universalist theory, I'm honored for those differences and welcomed into the circle. It's not all unicorns and rainbows, however. Sometimes I'm invited and included as a novelty or as a token person of color to show diversity. Sometimes people don't know how to approach me because they see that I look different and assume I am different from them, that I have different core values, that my background is probably so different from theirs. But at BUC, as with my extended family, I do belong. And actually, we all belong. Dare I say, anywhere we are, we belong. I'm not talking about walking into the wrong classroom in high school or going on stage when you're definitely not supposed to be. But if we show up with good intentions in our hearts and we are cracked open a little bit, vulnerable to the loving potential compassion from others, and if we offer others that same compassion by simply being our very worthy selves, then we belong. Here, lots of you stick around to know me and my values, my family, my history. I have met very few lifelong practicing Unitarian Universalists. In fact, many of you were drawn to this faith by your searching, by a need to feel connected to others who hold the same values. You may have attended a different church, temple, or synagogue, or maybe no church, but drifted away when you didn't feel these or any spiritual homes calling out to you. Some UUs don't even like church, but they often like our church. Hinduism, the way that I interpret it, embodies worship where many gods and goddesses represent various aspects of the human condition and qualities that we aspire towards: generosity, prosperity, knowledge, benevolence. We choose to call upon certain gods for certain needs. Ganesh, the elephant-headed god of knowledge, for extra help before a big exam. Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, when I buy my lottery ticket. Have any of you muttered a prayer to Saint Anthony, the patron saint of lost things, when you can't find your keys? I feel Hinduism trained me to be a pretty good Unitarian Universalist. When I think God, I think Krishna, Saraswati, Jesus, Allah, Great Spirit, nature, you. There is something mythical and whimsical about those old Diwali days, and I'm so grateful that those idyllic memories instilled in me an appreciation for the roses, thorns, and buds of life. Those imperfect weekends are family lore, and as I age, I recognize that they are also real, full of conflict, joy, and unconditionality. So in the end, Diwali is universal, celebrated, as Reverend Mandy said, by Jains, Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims, and perhaps now lots and lots of Unitarian Universalists.
The text for today's anthem is from the Indian poet Kabir. Kabir, who lived from 1440 to 1518, grew up amidst Hinduism and Islam and was deeply influenced by both. Legend has it that he was abandoned by his unwed Brahmin mother and adopted by a lower caste Muslim weaver. He was later influenced by a Hindu philosopher and sage. The poem, adapted by composer Elizabeth Alexander, reads as follows: You are in us, and we are in you, each being distinct, yet ever united. You are the tree, the seed, the cell. You are the flower, the fruit, and the shade. You are the sun, the light, the lighted. You are the manifold form of infinite space. You are the breath, the word, the meaning. You are the limit and the limitless. You are the immanent mind in us. You are the supreme soul within the soul. Blessed are all who see you.
So several weeks ago, we had a very quick overview of the 6 sources of Unitarian Universalism. I felt like I was riding a horse the whole time to get through it. These sources, with a capital S, are the roots of Unitarian Universalism. And during that sermon, I briefly mentioned that this year, we will be making regular visits to our 3rd source, which is wisdom from the world's religions, which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life. Religions that inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life. The 3rd source of our religion can be a little bit tricky. For example, what exactly do we mean when we say world religions? The language is a little bit dated and implies that some religions belong out there while others belong here, is not the intention of the authors at all. What they mean to do is to separate the three religions that have most directly contributed to modern Unitarian Universalism. That is Christianity and Judaism, our fourth source, and humanism, our fifth source. World religions is listed third before Christianity, Judaism, and humanism out of respect. That's a gesture of respect, but the wording is, again, a little dated and unfortunate to imply that there is two sets of religions that belong to the world and to here. If somebody were to ask me to rewrite the sources, and I want to be clear that I truly, deeply hope nobody ever does, I would word it like this: wisdom from other religions that inspire our spiritual and ethical lives, which then gets into the argument of whether or not Unitarian Universalism is a religion, which is probably the fight they were trying to avoid at the time, but the answer is yes, it is. This adjustment drops out the word world and just clarifies that all religions belong to the world. It also acknowledges that not all parts of all religions inspire our spiritual and ethical lives. So on one hand, more inclusive, and on the other, gives us room to exclude the wisdom, alleged wisdom, from religious traditions that are incompatible with our principles and our covenants, even if they come from Christianity, Judaism, and not Hinduism, humanism, sorry. I've been saying Hinduism a lot this week. Some of the parts of Christianity, Judaism, and humanism don't inspire our spiritual and ethical life. We get to pick and choose, is what that means when we word the third source in that way. The purpose of the third source, drawing wisdom from other religions, is to acknowledge that we do not have to start building our personal Unitarian Universalism from scratch, as if no one has ever wondered about the meaning of life. There is a whole wide world, literally, of spiritual and ethical knowledge that we can draw from. We are free to explore all of that and incorporate what inspires us into our personal theology or atheology. Here's the caveat. We have to be careful and responsible about how we undertake that exploration, knowing that for white people especially, there's a strong history of exploration leading immediately to colonization, and we have to be careful. The third source corresponds very closely to our fourth principle, free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Responsible. We're called to be thoughtful in how we explore other religions. This is especially true in a congregation such as ours that has made an explicit commitment to work on being anti-racist and multicultural by adopting the eighth principle. Finding the line between respectful interaction and cultural misappropriation is not easy. On one hand, we want to celebrate and to uplift, to learn from, to be inspired by a diversity of cultures and religions. And on the other, we don't want to tokenize, to disrespect, to culturally steal, to harm in any way. And it's tough because there is no right answer to these questions. There is no easy way of knowing whether or not we've gotten something right. No right answer, but definitely some very wrong answers. So the approach for our congregation's professional worship staff and our worship associates is an ongoing conversation about how we make choices, knowing that we might get it wrong sometimes, and if we do, we are willing to be held accountable. Being careful does not mean having to be afraid. By adopting the eighth principle and explicitly stating that we are an anti-racist congregation and that we embrace multiculturalism, we have embarked on a major shift in the culture of our congregation. We have affirmed our commitment to being anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural many, many, many times in many different ways, and that means we should celebrate and represent a lot of cultures. It does not mean that we should avoid all cultures because we are afraid of offending someone. We want a worship and congregational life that recognizes and honors cultural differences without coming down to the lowest common denominator. One way of exploring the wisdom of the world's religions is to celebrate, explore, or acknowledge holidays. In the past, those holidays have included Sukkot, Hanukkah, Yule, Christmas, Easter, Diwali, Good Friday, others. Remember, Unitarian Universalism doesn't really have any holidays. And yet, through the third source, we could have many of them if we're thoughtful and respectful in how we go about it. And I will make an asterisk here to acknowledge that there have been attempts to create UU holidays, and I remain skeptical. And so today we are exploring Diwali. One way in which we hope to find ourselves in partnership and relationship with traditions and cultures is by talking about personal connections. So thank you, Abha, for sharing yours today. My connection to Diwali is through the story that we briefly saw illustrated and then heard the rest from Shannon earlier. This is my current copy of the Ramayana. This is the copy that I was given by an uncle who was a retired Episcopal bishop. This was an ordination gift. This is the version that is accessible to a Western audience. It is therefore edited, abridged, and possibly less potent than other versions. This is the Penguin Classics version. So I acknowledge that what I know about this story is incomplete, and at the same time, it has been deeply impactful in my spiritual life. This is the epic tale of King Rama, and that includes the version of the story of Sita's kidnapping, the heroics of Hanuman, Rama's ultimate victory, and that story is told and revered in many religions. It's estimated that this text was compiled over the course of a millennia. This version is probably the most widely used in the United States. It's the one that Episcopal bishops and yoga teachers like. In this version, Rama's stepmother starts talking about exiling him to the forest here, and they are finalizing the battle here. So, as you can see, a 4-minute cartoon seemed like the way to go today. We want to tell you a story. How much time do you have? As is true with any sacred story, there is so much that is impossible to convey in a passing relationship with the text. And I'll say I have a slightly more than passing relationship with the text, but to tell you, right, the potential meanings of the story become even further muddied when we take into account cultural differences, not to mention translation choices, the abridging, the editing. Trying to gain an intellectual understanding of any sacred text requires guidance, a little bit of grounding in language and culture and time. Trying to understand a sacred text that is new to you is like trying to explain a really funny meme to a person who's never heard of a computer. It's possible, but it takes a lot of scaffolding and framework and shifting and analogies to decipher the possible meanings of the text. I'm gonna do my best to do that with you today. Having some level of that intellectual approach to a sacred text is important. Understanding those mechanics, or at least understanding that they exist, is part of how we respectfully learn from religions that are not our own. Investing some time into learning about where this text came from, how it got to be in this format is, and what makes it special, that is a tribute that we pay for gaining wisdom that inspires us in our spiritual and ethical life. But there's more to sacred stories than intellect. The path of the mind is one way to wisdom, and I firmly believe we have to be willing to go down that path at least a little bit. But it's possible to keep going down that path and completely miss the point. These stories are meant to inspire us in some way, to move us to action, to teach us something, extol a virtue, a little bit of each, maybe something else depending on the text. The path of the mind is important, but it is the path of the heart that is the true journey to spiritual and ethical development. All sacred texts have the ability to stir the heart of the reader without that reader having the slightest idea of what is going on. The path of the heart is actually how my relationship with the story began. I first heard this story framed as the heroic works of Hanuman saving Sita from the evil demon in an act of devotion to Rama. And I heard that story as part of my yoga practice a little more than 20 years ago. I was very serious about yoga as a spiritual practice. I was actually a yoga teacher for a while, never full-time, but it was an aspiration for a bit. And studying yogic texts, including this story, was part of my practice. The yoga communities in which I was involved leaned heavily on teaching the stories and the spiritual concepts alongside poses that they had inspired. I learned a version of the story that we heard today in tandem with the pose called Hanumanasana, Hanuman's pose. It is a pose with one foot really far back and one foot really far forward. It can be done standing, or it could also be the splits. I was taught that this pose is a tribute to Hanuman, who leapt from the mainland to Sri Lanka to save Sita. The pose was meant to remind us of one foot in back on land and the other foot forward on an island. And the idea of spanning two worlds held a lot of resonance for me. And it was the first time that that concept had been presented to me both as a positive thing and a religious idea. I never found any stories about being a little bit in two worlds as part of the sacred stories that I grew up in. But I had always felt like I was a little bit in two worlds, and kind of like I didn't really belong totally in either one of them, because I didn't really fully belong in either place, right? So I don't belong in both, I don't belong in either, wasn't sure. Having access to a text that framed world spanning as a good thing and a way to win a battle of good over evil was really validating for me. It sparked my curiosity about what else might be in this giant book and helped me make sense of my life. So I started reading more from the Ramayana. I learned that Hanuman was a prince with the powers of a god, that he'd been cursed to forget his powers for a period of time. Rama came to Hanuman's father asking help, looking for an ally to find Sita. And so Hanuman was sent along with his friends on a quest to find her. The search party came to the southern tip of the continent. They realized they needed to go explore Lanka. No one could get across that ocean, so they lifted the curse. One of his friends had put the curse on him, so he lifted the curse. Hanuman remembers he has divine powers. He jumps across. From there, he parlayed with the demons. Things eventually came to war, with the victory being his in the name of Rama. The story is rife with inspiration for the spiritual and ethical life. Hanuman is very popular in the Western understanding of Hinduism, and I think it's because it's the image of a monkey-faced god. I think it captures the imagination. Getting caught up in that appearance is a real loss for anyone who is interested in growing spiritually from the wisdom of the story. The text tells us more about his qualities, including cleverness, courtesy or courtliness, military prowess, leadership, determination, and above all, devotion to Lord Rama. In fact, in many images of Hanuman, his heart contains manifestations of Sita and Rama, and he's pointing to them. There's a lot of rich ground in the story that is one of the touchstones of Diwali. It's more accurate to say one of the versions of one of the stories that is one of the touchstones of Diwali. There is an expanse of wisdom found here that might inspire our spiritual and ethical lives. For me, the story still pulls toward Hanuman and contemplation of his attributes. I find that my spiritual and ethical life benefits from the example that he provides of a steely-eyed courage, heart overflowing with devotion, the ability to move between worlds. As I've grown up, I don't feel stuck between two worlds so often anymore, but I've gained a sense of agency to move between worlds as I need to. I offer these themes up in hopes that you might find benefit from them as well as individuals, but more specifically as the individuals that make up BUC. As we build the anti-racist, intentionally multicultural, beloved community, we're trying to get from one place to another. And there may be times when we feel like there is an ocean between where we are and where we need to be. We will need to be able to move between worlds and to span them. In those times, we might find wisdom in the image of the warrior who is dauntless because he is motivated by something deeper than duty. He is motivated by love, ultimate love. Being motivated by love is the only way that we will become the anti-racist, multicultural, beloved community that the 21st century demands of Unitarian Universalism. Not duty, not fear, not obligation, love. Ultimate love that spans worlds and has a steely-eyed courage. This Diwali season, may we each be beacons to guide that love into our hearts, into our homes, and into our church. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Go now into this world as a beacon of hope and joy. Go in love, go in peace. Now that our worship has ended, our service begins. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.